And like what Mr. Albo said, all these plants being concentrated on one place, it actually helps the nuisance problem, because if you have 10 patients that you're cultivating for, because they can't cultivate on less than so many acres, instead of them doing it illegally, they seek out a collective grower that can do it on their property. But at 1,000 feet, it's a little bit, that would be very, very difficult if you're not on completely flat land. But
1320.
That's right, 1,320 feet.
That's a fine.
No, 1280, not 13.
No, 1,520 is 4 miles.
A quarter mile is 1280.
5,000, 5260.
You're close. 280 feet.
You're close.
No one
Point
said this.
is, you have a 1,000-foot setback on 40 acres. You got about a 10-foot square area in the middle that you can grow on.
yeah,
Yeah.
So if you got 1280 or 1320,
1320 is
you've only got a very small part in the center where you can grow it. You've got
1,000 foot.
a perfectly square parcel.
You wouldn't even have
Yeah, you wouldn't have
1,000.
anything. You wouldn't have, because you've got to go.
Eliminate it.
Well, no, you'd have to put it on that side if you got a house.
No, because you got a setback from here too,
yeah, you got
And
cross
here.
setbacks.
and here. So you couldn't grow on 40 acres.
Well, it depends on where the nearest residence is.
The maximum.
If you're doing a distance from a residence, that's one thing. If you're doing a setback, that's another thing.
No, I'm talking about, I still want, if you got 80 plants to 72, we should be 1,000 feet.
Have 100.
Okay, well, let's talk setback first, and then let's talk
Okay.
residence to residence.
Okay, I meant residence when I said,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
So maybe 150
150
feet setback.
150 feet.
That's from the property line.
From the property line.
150 feet from the property line, Mr. Alba, can you support that, sir?
yes.
Yes,
Can you support that, Mr. Pyle?
yes.
Okay. And gentlemen?
Yes.
150 feet from the property line on the 40 acres plus of 72 plants. Excellent. What about from the parcels, or from the
In
dwelling?
addition, on that, you want a restriction of 1,000 feet from a
The nearest residence.
residence?
Why don't we cut that to 500?
I cut down from 2,000
I
already.
gave you 70. I gave you 72. I came in at 48.
Is this what they talk about when they say you don't want to see certain things being made?
Yeah, we're making sausage.
We're making sausage.
Law and sausage.
Yeah, law and sausage.
Counselor, is that existing dwelling?
Yes.
That,
Yes, that's a great question. So he makes a good point.
I didn't hear it.
He says, is that existing dwelling? That's along the lines of the daycare provider.
Yeah.
If you have somebody that buys a parcel adjacent to Randy and Ted, for example, all right, and they snug it right up to the property line and then encroach.
I think we throughout all these, we should have existing dwelling when we use the
Yes.
setback, because if somebody builds a new dwelling that puts them closer to, then they're the ones that are encroaching upon the grow, not the grow encroaching on
Right.
them.
Got it.
And that's
Well,
basically.
what's the number?
1,000 feet.
I know you want.
1,000 feet, again, if somebody's house is here,
Well, don't it,
you're,
well, maybe 40, this is 40 acres or more. Suppose it's
okay,
500
just using the
acres.
minimum as an example, if the house is here, you're.
Well, you have a
excluding-
20-foot setback on their property, so you
Then
have
they
20
not
foot
building-
and then a
So you're
1,000
making
foot.
this-
So
they
they
not
would
building-
be relegated to like about 100 feet over on that side of the property.
Right, and if you got one here, and one here, and one here, and one here.
Well, then you shouldn't be growing 72 plants if you got that.
All right, I'll go down.
If you're gonna have 72 plants and all the smoke
You
and
need some space.
steam and all that, you better be 1,000 feet from the nearest residence.
So let me ask a question, Mr.
And it may have to be 80
Supervisor.
acres. I
Mr.
mean.
Chairman, what do you think about the setback requirement from a dwelling on 40 acres plus? Because I'm hearing 2 at 1,000, but I'm hearing 2 at 150 or something
But
different.
150 is the setback on the.
I understand that.
Right, so you're going to get 170 anyway. So if you went 200 feet, and you're talking to those people like Chandler's up there, they were saying that, you get within 150 feet of that guy's place up there on Valley View.
Yeah.
150 feet is nothing. I can throw a rock that far.
Well, I
don't
know,
think
but
he's
that's
gonna
what
be
they said
gone
what the
much
smell
longer.
was.
Yeah, he's not going to be there.
No, but what I'm saying though is, what
Yeah.
they conveyed to me was when they got within 150 feet of the property line, because he was doing it right on the property line.
Yeah. And that was a very large grow.
And it was a
You
large
actually-
grove, yeah, 99.
Ted brought up the situation of pig farmers. If you're a pig farmer, it's 200 feet. So, I mean, that smells by far worse than cannabis. You know, I mean,
Well, that's my opinion.
hey, I'm dealing with flowers now too.
So, what's the number, gentlemen?
1,000.
And you know, a guy may not be able to do it on 40 acres. If there's a house right next door, he may have to buy 80 acres or 200 acres.
Okay, what if your garden's already established?
Disestablish it.
Yeah.
Reestablish it. This is
My neighbor is the highway patrol, and he loaned me the tractor to do some cultivating.
you got to give him part of the.
He's the whole highway patrol?
Yeah.
You won't go there, kid.
I mean, I think 500 feet, that's like very reasonable, and that's pretty far. From my garden, from the very edge of my garden to my neighbor's dwelling is give or take on 715 feet in a straight line as a crow flies. He cannot see my garden. He'd have to walk 300 feet up the hill
How many
to even
plants you
get.
got?
Last year I only had 48, so I never do that many. So I had
Alright.
48 plants.
It's about compromise 750.
That's a huge start because he was at 2,000.
Compromise is 500.
Compromise is
All right,
500.
here's 500.
Yeah, I was going to say Mike leans is towards 500.
So 500 is the number from,
I actually only
The
wanted
fence,
500.
essentially.
So I started
500 is the number from the fence to any adjoining dwelling
Yes.
on a parcel of 40 acres or larger.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
There's no way anybody's going to grow.
Are you going to be able to
Not even that
enforce
plastic
all this?
clothes.
From an,
Well,
from
well,
an,
yes.
from an
Is
exist-
caveat, may enforce.
from an existing well.
Yes, understood. Understood.
One more suggestion, I don't know if this would help Mr. Hines or not, but in the category 2, we limit to 12 plants. We could consider 12 in and 12 out, which would be,
Number 2.
There you go.
which would make, I don't know if that makes a difference in the cycle of.
So you can start your plans
Yeah,
inside,
big
Dennis?
time. That would be a good compromise of saying you can have 12 plants inside and 12 plants outside. So if something happens to the outside plants, say a freeze comes out of nowhere, wind breaks one to pieces, then you have 12 more plants inside you could select.
I was thinking the sex selection.
Yeah, that would help Dennis as well.
Yeah. Or even
Is
say
that
like
good, Dennis?
if you put it on a covered porch, you know, and enclosed it.
You can't hear it.
You're
I'm
under
writing
each
it
other.
down for him.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have a problem with
12 in and 12 out.
that. Maybe this is what 1 to 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drawing indoors is really out of question for me. Like,
Well, maybe you're going to have to learn from Randy. Teach you how to grow indoors.
Oh, I don't do indoor, but I know a little bit.
Hang on a second.
I don't want to hear it, Randy.
So I don't know if I just got directions from the board or not on the 1 to 11 acres in terms of indoors and out.
It's been modified.
Okay. 12 in plus 12 out.
12 plants max for 1 acre or less. 12 plants in, 12 plants out, max of 24 on 1 to 11. 24 plants max tier 3 and 72 plants max on tier 4, which is above 40 acres.
Okay. So,
Complicated.
well, you know, it's a complicated issue.
Can we move to on page 2, Bob?
Yes, sir. Page
Just
2.
Bobby talking to
Yes, sir.
you. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
page 2, item
Gotta keep
G.
control here.
Item what?
Item G,
Yes.
cultivation of any amount of marijuana located premises within 1,000 feet of schools. Should that include public parks and library
Yes.
daycare?
Thank you. That was
Say again?
item G. So understand
And there
that,
again, it should be existing schools, existing parks, existing daycares.
Yes.
No existing.
but the point is that all of page 2 references the legislative intent and findings that you would be making by adoption of this ordinance. And basically, and that's consistent with the testimony we've received, which is parks, schools, and daycare.
Yeah, no, churches aren't going to be part of that.
I had not included it. Is it, okay, in the conditions of cultivation, because that's where we started this conversation, and I'm hoping that's where we end this conversation. We set out the tiered approach, and it looks like we've made some progress, and I'm very appreciative of that, gentlemen. Thank you. The last issue is the exclusion zone. That is, doesn't matter what size your parcel. If you're within, and what I think we had previously decided was 1,000 feet of a school, a public park, or a licensed daycare facility.
Existing.
Correct. Thank you. That you would not be able to grow outdoors.
Right.
I got
Outdoors only.
a question for you on that.
Sir.
Okay. We're coming in the growing season, so people will be growing. Okay, in the meantime, come November, December, Randy's no longer growing. In the meantime, his neighbor comes in and opens up the daycare.
I have addressed that specifically.
Yeah.
And I've specifically addressed that by saying that that provision, that exclusion provision, does not apply and no abatement will be permitted to occur under this ordinance if essentially Randy had a full growing season before that and did in fact grow. It's basically a pre-existing grow, can't get booted out by someone that basically moves a daycare facility in right within 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Okay?
So now, let's take that a step farther.
You always like to, don't you?
Randy's there and he's growing.
Yeah?
Okay, in the meantime, he decides to move to Fresno for whatever reason.
Sure.
Does that no longer
If
apply?
he breaks it over the previous year, so if he grew 5 years ago at that site and he left and now came back, he can't be grandfathered in because he grew, but it'd have to be the previous.
This is an important discussion.
Yeah.
Question is how many growing seasons should go by from a growing season that was utilized, where there was a harvest outdoors, and the next time they want to come, in the meantime, a daycare facility comes in, and when he wants to come back, how many seasons of inactivity should then constitute, you don't get to get grandfathered in.
Or even the
Does that make
sale,
sense?
or even the sale of the property, I don't know.
But,
Those are good questions.
they are good
But
questions.
I think the intent that is with the zoning and so forth is if there's been an active grow that is
Yeah.
well documented or has been a matter of record for the previous 12 months, then that site would be protected. Even if he sold it to another grower who decided to grow, because he sold it because, hey, I've got this grow site, I'm moving here, would you like to take it over? I mean, if there's been an active grow site for 12 months prior to, if somebody moves in and tries to create a block, I don't think that new activity should trump that. I mean, it runs with the land.
He likes that term.
He does.
That'll be over $800, please.
It's a Bob business.
Lori.
A minor question from the enforcement officers. How do we verify there was a grow? And
Well, you don't have to, because if you looked at the draft ordinance, you'd have seen the language which says,
if it was before me earlier, I might have time.
well, good thing it was on the agenda and on the internet. Sorry, Mark. The burden's on the grower to establish if they want to avail themselves of this kind of pre-existing grow situation. They got to do the classic take a picture with a newspaper, in front of their grow the year before,
Or come to supervisor meetings, right?
So, no, seriously though, the burden's on the person that wants to claim the pre-existing grow exemption to be able to enjoy.
That'll be a fourth situation, because if somebody was to move in next door and all of a sudden start complaining to the code enforcement, about this activity next to it, that's going to bring to the forefront, is this a pre-existing thing or is it something new? And,
Yes.
and it's going to, that person who's doing the grow is going to say, hey, I've been doing this now for 3
Right.
years. I've been under the radar. In terms of not having any complaints or any problems. Underground, yeah, and hasn't been an issue, so these people are now infringing on my right.
So, Lori,
Yes.
you didn't have any problem finding David Likes' building.
Google it. So,
Oh man.
am the code enforcement officer, but I don't have a great deal of experience being the pot. Alright. Except for college.
Okay, we need to start winding this down.
Do we have a registration process?
Oh, you can if you want.
The problem, that problem is now you got a bureaucracy, and you got to pay for it, you got fees. I think for the time being, now maybe down the road, if it becomes a huge problem, that may become a requirement. But I think
Gentlemen, I accept Mr. Burns' proposition of the newspaper. In fact, I like it.
It was
I'm scared.
not well thought out.
I think it was the most brilliant thing he said today.
There's probably no need for a motion, but it might be helpful for council if there is a vote and direction to bring back this ordinance with these changes to the.
I have one last thing I'd like to ask about, if I could.
Yes, sir.
And that is on page 13, we get to
Let me get to it.
the misdemeanor penalty. I
Yes,
just
sir.
want to say, anybody violating this shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Do we have to have it be a misdemeanor?
Well,
Want it to be a felony?
No.
it can't be. You can't establish
Well,
a felony crime.
it goes back to the concern raised by Mr. Hines, and I think it's a valid one. I mean, maybe 30 years ago, the demonizing of marijuana and stuff, maybe that was an appropriate thing, but I think it's a whole new ballgame, and I would say, obviously, maybe an infraction or some sort of administrative penalty, but this idea of creating a criminal record, I mean, from the DA's office, I know with the changes in the laws on, with the inmates and, the drug offenders that are in the state prison, they Prop 47, whatever it was, changed the whole dynamics is,
So let me ask a direct question.
yeah.
How many don't want a misdemeanor included?
I don't think it should be a misdemeanor.
Understood. Is there anyone else that joins with him?
I'm on that, and I just think that my compromise there would have, don't make a misdemeanor, but we need to put registration in there.
Well, I mean, I think an infraction, there's administrative penalties that can be pursued. I mean, I don't think they should get a get-out-of-jail-free card.
So there are, in the enforcement provisions, there are opportunities for administrative penalties that exceed the amount that could be imposed for an infraction.
Okay.
So my suggestion would be, if you decide that you don't want a misdemeanor, don't bother with the infraction, because the authority would already exist in there to impose something tantamount to it.
I would say we do it through the administrative penalties. I mean, in terms of...
perfectly acceptable.
I might add, though, since I operate under that premise with code enforcement, that often is the fact that people are okay with not paying it, and you just, so what happens when you don't pay it?
You put a lien on the property, and eventually you own the 40 acres.
And that is allowed in here.
That's a 5-year process, so I just want the board to be aware that for 5 years.
Look at it this way here, job security. 5 years, we're going to need you to be there.
Well, that brings up my
With your newspaper.
Page
Okay.
10.
Hang on, I'd like to get resolution of that issue before I go on to Mr. Almo's question, if I may. Who says no misdemeanor?
I'll go with no misdemeanor. Yeah, I'm gonna go that way too.
All right, no misdemeanor it is. I got 3 of 5. I can work with that.
Okay, if we're going to go with
Next question.
no misdemeanor, then on page 10 on the administrative civil penalties.
Yes, sir. Are you going to ask that that go up to 1,000?
Yes.
Actually, okay. So what page was that? 10.
10.
And that's an excellent point.
I think the one point with the misdemeanor versus non-misdemeanor is that you've got several different potential individuals that could be guilty of violating this ordinance. One would be the landowner, which Supervisor Chapman addresses, you can lease the property and sell it, but the other is a tenant who, essentially will potentially not be held responsible.
Well,
without a criminal.
if it becomes a huge problem at some point down the line,
We can amend.
it can always be amended, and we can always throw that in there. But I'm with Aaron. If we're going to go to the administrative penalty and make that as our primary thumb on trying to keep people in line, I'm with you. $1,000 would be a
Now,
start.
understood that the 1,000 is the maximum.
Max, yeah.
That's the maximum. The enforcement officer has discretion to propose administrative penalties under this draft ordinance in an amount consistent with essentially the violation. They don't have to be $1,000. And I'm a proponent of just because you can doesn't mean you have to. It could be 500.
If it's a minor innocuous thing, then $100. But if it's
Possible.
if it's egregious and in your face, and you
Yes.
go for 1,000, and if it gets to be too bad, you come back and you throw in the other penalties.
Hang them.
Can you work with that?
Yeah.
Can you gentlemen work with that? Mr. Chairman, can you work with that?
Yeah.
Good thing. Good.
Just sign it.
Any other questions or issues associated? So, it's 2:52 right now. I know you've got a 3 o'clock meeting. I've got one as well. Here's the question. You want me to bring this back in non-draft form for reading and possible adoption? Now, I propose to you to present it to you in urgency legislation form, which contemplates 4/5 vote. If I incorporate the changes today that it appears that we've all agreed on, is that something where I think I can get 4/5?
You should get a 5/5 vote.
I'd sure like to get 5.
I think we've talked about it enough.
I didn't vote for the last ordinance because there was a lot of things that were left out. And the problem is this here closes a lot of the areas of concerns that I had in the past, so I can support this ordinance.
Okay, everybody good with that? Do you need a motion or anything?
No.
Fine. Consensus is yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Go for it.
We're done with marijuana then. Thank you guys for your help.
Hey, thank you.
We have information from the board of supervisors.
I have something else.
That is correspondence, nothing to add in.
I just would like to ask, since we had our meeting started this morning, 30 by Kathy.
What time?
Nancy Martinez.
101.30.
Her mother, by all means, passed away here this past week, and I'd like to ask that we add her to our list of memory of today.
Very good. Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Have an evening.